Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Itchy Mysteries. I'm your host, John Lorden, and there have been several times since I've started doing Itchy Mysteries in particular when I have watched a documentary and I go, it's not good enough. It's not good enough to review. Typically, if it is below what I would consider a 5 out of 10, I usually don't show it to you guys. Now, I think it's pretty interesting that the last episode we had last week was my top 10 for all the stuff that I reviewed in 2016. And purely by chance, this week I decided to watch a documentary that was essentially a reason for me to break my rule of not telling you guys about bad movies. I may have found one of the worst, I wouldn't even consider it a true crime, although it does have elements of true crime. One of the worst of these mysterious documentaries that I try to search out for you guys. So, and I do think it's worth talking about, and we'll talk about why as I go along. Today we are talking about The Haunting of Fox Hollow Farm. This was produced in 2011. Let me give you just some of the description from IMDb. Can the soul of a killer linger forever? Filmmaker Dan T. Hall explores macabre shadows of the past as he documents the haunting of the infamous Fox Hollow Farm estate, former home of alleged serial killer Herb Baumeister. It's really hard to get that out. Baumeister. Now, I didn't know anything about Herb Baumeister, and the description that I saw for this, I actually watched it on Amazon. If you're an Amazon Prime member, you can see this for free. If you're not, you can rent it on YouTube for a couple dollars. That might be about $1.50 more than I think it's actually worth. But you might have a reason to watch it. We'll get there. But let me just say this case, after watching the documentary, I did look into it more, and it's a very interesting case. It includes essentially a mass murderer. He was married, he had kids, he had a business. There are some interesting things about how he ends his life. There was a lot of very interesting points that I saw kind of in this montage of crap, let me just say. I know you guys are like, John, you never talk like this. I'm telling you guys, this documentary is it's in a different league. I haven't seen anything like this before. Essentially, when you start watching this film, it feels like you're watching a trailer, like someone has kind of cut together some real splashy moments. And you guys know that I'm always very critical of when they try to use creepy music too often, or, they'll shake the screen around and turn things black and white and kind of have the screen go fuzzy and do stuff like that. I'm not the biggest fan of it. To be honest, I do appreciate it in the right context. For example, I love the show Ghost Adventures. And in that context, I totally get it. It's an aesthetic that they use to tell the story. But something that Ghost Adventures does way better than this movie did is actually include a narrative. Typically in an episode of Ghost Adventures, particularly at the start, they will talk about the history of where they are, whatever building they're at, what happened in the past there. They'll talk to local residents and get some input. They kind of create a narrative. They really stack the story, and then they get to their investigation and do all their stuff of running around in the dark with their meters looking for ghosts. This decided that even though they could have followed a pretty simple narrative path like that, they tried to edit it in this kind of action-y way, throwing a lot of different information at you from these different points in the narrative. For example, you'll have an interview with someone talking about Herb and the murders that he committed. Then it will cut to someone that is part of the paranormal investigation team, them having a moment of being freaked out or something like that. Then it'll cut to a piece of a newscast, and he does this ridiculous thing with the newscasts where the newscasters will say something like, 10 bodies have now been found, and then he'll replay the same audio clip, but he will drop the pitch on it so it sounds like a monster voice going, 10 bodies have now been found. And then it'll repeat in the background. You'll kind of hear it repeating over and over, like 2 or 3 more times. Been found, been found. It is so weird. And it's just so obvious that it's making this blatant attempt to put you in this spooky mood. It's trying to spook you out. When if you look at the actual story of what this guy did, and even the stories about him potentially haunting this farm or this estate that he used to live at, that information is already very creepy and will certainly give you chills if you just get that information cleanly to you. But this movie is just edited in such a bad manner, you are not able to get that information. So like I said, basically for the first half of this movie, which is, it's a little over an hour long, it's like an hour and 6 minutes or something like that. For the first half, you feel like you're just watching this extra long trailer. And like literally there's edits in the middle of people's sentences. There's weird scenes like, it looks like he has a psychic investigator there, and it's like he's holding the camera and he's asking the psychic investigator, oh, are you feeling something? And the investigator all of a sudden goes into slow motion and just shows him like walking around the area. He doesn't even answer. Like, why would you even include that? You're asking this guy if he feels something. He doesn't even respond to you. And then you try to make it creepy by slowing it down and showing him walking around like he's considering what you had just asked him. It was just, it's bizarre. There's no other way to put it. It is completely bizarre. Now, why I'm telling you guys about this is because some of you out there might be interested in, at some point, making your own YouTube videos, or maybe even getting into documentaries and doing work like this. This is a perfect example of pretty much what not to do if you're going to take on something like this. The narrative completely busted up. The information is given to you all out of order. It's not given to you in a very cohesive way where you can kind of really understand it's just these little pieces that are thrown at you because of this weird editing mechanic that's going on. And I can tell you just from reading two little articles, one of them at Wikipedia and another article, which I'll include both of these below for any of you that are interested in this actual case. You will get way more information from reading those two pieces of source rather than this documentary, which is very strange. The second half of this documentary turns into what I would consider like a very bad ghost hunting expedition, or like an episode of Ghost Adventures if you didn't have, kind of charismatic guys or this likable troupe that you like watching go into these adventures. You have a bunch of people, you don't know who they are. There's like 20 different investigators, maybe 25 different investigators. It never goes into any of their past. You have no idea what their qualifications are. They could have been investigating for a week. They could be investigators for 10 years. You have no idea. It is footage of them collecting EVPs. You know, I'm always kind of critical about EVPs, but half of them are just completely not there. Like they're literally showing you something on the screen saying, oh, it said this, and they're replaying the sound, and it is not there. It's not even in the realm of, oh, well, I kind of hear something and maybe it's saying that. No, there is no voice. It is literally not there. Then there's about a quarter of the EVPs where, yeah, you can hear some kind of voice. You might agree or disagree with what they're saying it says. And then there's a very small handful of EVPs where you're like, that's just someone talking. Like, did you guys not know that you have 20 people walking around this estate and maybe you're picking up audio from someone else talking? Because you can pretty clearly make out that that's someone just having normal conversation somewhere. It is super bizarre. And it's such a missed opportunity because there is a very good story to tell here. There is a very interesting story in terms of the true crime aspect, in terms of this guy, Baumeister, his past. I mean, and that never even comes up in the movie. For example, if you read the articles, you'll learn that this is a guy that was really troubled when he was a kid. He liked to play with dead animals. He actually urinated on one of his teacher's desks. Some very bizarre behavior from this guy. There is, I think, one mention in the film that he is actually married that comes way late in the film, and you're like, hold on a second, so he's married? Was he killing all these people while his wife was in the house? There's all these questions that if you know the story and you're watching this film, do not even get attempted to be answered. I mean, there's just no footwork in trying to truly flesh out the real story points it just feels like this collage of information where you're like, did this filmmaker know what the heck they were doing? And if you look at this guy, Dan T. Hall, if you look at him on IMDb, he supposedly like directed and produced over 20 different things. Now, admittedly, this particular movie, The Haunting of Fox Hollow Farm, supposedly winds up in like the bargain bins at Kmart where you can buy 20 movies that are all packaged together for $5. So admittedly, with something like that, you're not going to expect it to have, won the Sundance Film Award or something like that. But still, just having the basics of a cohesive narrative with decent investigation. Let's just say decent. I mean, he interviewed 2 people about the true crime aspect. He didn't reach out to any of the victims' family members, which would have been a great entry point to start this from, and might have kind of driven some respect into this piece in terms of giving him a reason for telling this story and getting this information out there. It's so clear from the very start all the way through to the end. The only thing this guy cares about is he's trying to scare you. He's trying to creep you out. He's pulling every trick he can think of, creepy music, weird sound effects, dropping the pitch on people's voices. I kind of even suspect some of those EVPs where I told you it's just a person talking, I kind of have a feeling that maybe the filmmaker dropped those in himself, that maybe he is the actual voice. And even that, there are these certain segments where all of a sudden there's a narrator and you're just like, what's this voice? Like, it hasn't been there for the first half of the movie and all of a sudden this voice starts popping up and just adding random information. You don't know who this guy is. And then at the end he goes on for this kind of monologue towards the end where you're like, what the heck? Was this written by a 15-year-old in high school for his creative writing class? Like, it's crazy bad. That's how I have to put it. On a scale of 1 to 10, if it didn't have some value for looking at it as a piece of do not do filmmaking like this, I think I have to give it just a little, I'll give it 2 points for that. It's a 2 out of 10. It is super, super bad. As you're watching the whole second half, if you can keep your attention pegged to that film, you are much better than I, because by that point I had all these questions about the real case and I was just itching to open a web window and start searching and learning more about this case because I wanted to understand it better. Now, if you do want to see maybe some better produced segments on this, there have been a ton of different television shows and cable shows that have covered it. You can go to the Wikipedia article, scroll down, and you'll see a list of literally all the television shows that have covered it. If you do a search on Herb Baumeister in YouTube, a lot of those shows will come up. You know how people will repost those things. So you'll be able to find some of those shows there, as well as a couple of modern YouTubers that are just talking about the case a little bit. I'm kind of considering, I might do a brain scratch on it. It's really got me a bit interested. And outside of the true crime aspect, there are people that have bought the estate after the fact, and they seem to be having some ghost phenomenon going on there. So I do think that it was a reasonable thought to say, hey, let's get some paranormal investigators and let's look into this and let's make a documentary about all that. I just wish that Dan had done some basic structured narrative, taken all the true crime elements, researched them a bit more, because I'm telling you, there are major facts that you find out that in researching this after the fact that are just not in this film. He could have built up a very compelling story on the first half. I'd say even 3/4 of this could have been dedicated to the true crime aspect. I mean, this guy supposedly killed somewhere around 17 victims. That's a lot to talk about. And then the last quarter, maybe you could have done, the paranormal investigators come in, maybe introduce us to them, actually give us some idea who these people are and what their backgrounds are. At least, I mean, look, some of us are going to debate, well, this is a psychic, I don't believe in psychics, and we're going to want to write off their information regardless. But it's a bit different when it's, oh, this is a psychic that's been doing it for 30 years. Oh, this psychic has assisted law enforcement and FBI on investigations. I mean, there are certain things about people's backstories that can change, kind of color the information that they're giving us in a piece like this. But you have no chance to get any of that out of this film. It is just such a mess. It's kind of an amazing mess. And that's why I had to tell you guys about it. So that's it. The Haunting of Fox Hollow Farm. Watch at your own discretion. If you're an Amazon Prime member, you can see it for free. It's an hour of your life, but if you are interested particularly in filmmaking, documentary making, or even production for YouTube, I recommend you check this out and just know you could write a whole list based off watching this. Oh, don't do this. Don't do that. If you're going to hide someone's identity, make sure their face is actually blacked out, because there's a woman that they tried to hide her identity in this, and I could clearly see her face enough that if I took it into one of my video editing programs or an image editing program, a very simple adjustment of brightness and contrast would show me all of her face. It's really crazy. It's a crazy thing. Maybe you should check it out. If you're not a filmmaker, if you're not interested in things that are so bad they might actually be good, run away from the Haunting of Fox Hollow Farm. But perhaps take a look at the links I have below about this case, because it is an interesting case, and I'm still debating. It might actually turn into a brain scratch. We'll see. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining me here in the screening room with another itchy mystery. I didn't know the mystery was going to be how bad can a documentary get, but that's probably the biggest mystery we have going on here. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll catch you on the next show on the Lord Nards channel.